What could possibly make Satan fall silent? What could cause the angels of heaven to stand in astonishment? And what could move God Himself to act in a way that would echo through the spiritual history of humanity? There is a story in Scripture that answers these questions. But it is not just a story about suffering or faith or endurance. It is a story about a man who carried a secret so profound that it exposed the true nature of human faith, revealed the strategy of Satan, and ultimately uncovered what God is truly seeking in the heart of a human being. That story is the story of Job. Many people read the book of Job and assume it is simply about perseverance, a righteous man who endures unimaginable suffering yet refuses to abandon God. But if we look deeper, we begin to see that this story is not merely about endurance. It is about something hidden in plain sight, something most believers overlook. The secret of Job is not just patience. It is not merely loyalty. And it is not even faith in its most common understanding. It is something far deeper. To understand that secret, we must first understand the man who carried it. In the ancient land of Uz, under the vast and burning skies of the east, there lived a man named Job. Scripture describes him in terms rarely used for any human being. He was blameless, upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. This was not human opinion. This was a divine evaluation of a human life. In terms of material wealth, Job was among the greatest men of his time. His flocks covered the hills like clouds. His camels formed long caravans across the desert. He owned hundreds of oxen, hundreds of donkeys, and had servants beyond counting. His prosperity was so great that he was considered the greatest of all the people in the East. Yet his wealth was not what made him extraordinary. His family life was equally complete. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. His children lived in unity and joy, regularly gathering together to celebrate and share meals. It was a household marked by harmony, connection, and blessing. But the true depth of Job's character was revealed not in his possessions or his family, but in his relationship with God. Job was not religious in a superficial sense. He did not simply follow rituals out of tradition. His reverence for God was genuine, alive, and deeply rooted. He lived with a constant awareness that God was at the center of everything. And then there is a small detail, almost easy to overlook, that reveals just how profound his faith truly was. After each cycle of feasting, Job would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings for each of his children, not because he knew they had sinned, but because of a possibility. He said, "It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Pay attention to that. Most people pray after something goes wrong. Job prayed before it happened. He was not merely reacting to sin, he was guarding against it. His righteousness was not passive, it was proactive. This was a deeper kind of holiness, a preventative righteousness, a heart that was not only obedient but watchful. And it was precisely this kind of man, one who seemed to have everything: wealth, family, honor, and deep faith, who became the center of a cosmic conflict he could not see. While Job was living his life on earth, unaware of what was unfolding, a scene was taking place in heaven. On a certain day, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And among them came Satan, the adversary, the accuser. God asked him a simple question: "Where have you come from?" Satan answered, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." This response reveals his nature. He is restless, observant, constantly searching, looking for opportunities to destroy, to accuse, to undermine. Then God said something remarkable. "Have you considered my servant Job?" In that moment, God himself pointed to a man on earth and declared that there was no one like him, blameless, upright, fearing God, and turning away from evil. It was a divine commendation. But Satan immediately responded with a dangerous accusation. He claimed that Job's faith was not genuine. According to Satan, Job feared God for one reason only: because he was blessed. God had protected him, prospered him, and placed a hedge around everything he owned. His faith, therefore, was nothing more than a transaction. In other words, Satan was not just attacking Job, he was attacking the very nature of human devotion. Do people love God for who he is, or only for what he gives? This question cuts to the core of all faith. If Satan is right, then all worship is conditional. All devotion is self-serving. Every act of faith is rooted not in love, but in benefit. And to answer that question, God allowed something extraordinary. He permitted Job to be tested, not to destroy him, but to reveal what was already inside him. From that moment forward, Job's life, once marked by stability, blessing, and completeness, was about to enter a storm that would strip everything away. And through that storm, the truth about faith, about God, and about the human heart would finally be revealed. What followed was not gradual decline. It was not a slow unraveling. It was a sudden, violent collapse, layer after layer of Job's life stripped away in rapid succession, as if an invisible hand were dismantling everything he had ever known. The first blow came without warning. A messenger arrived, breathless, carrying devastating news. Raiders had attacked, stolen the oxen and donkeys, and killed the servants. Before Job could even process what he had heard, another messenger arrived. Fire had fallen from heaven and consumed the sheep and the shepherds. Then another, Chaldean forces, had taken the camels and slaughtered more servants. Each report was worse than the last. Each one ended the same way. I alone have escaped to tell you. There was no pause between the tragedies, no time to grieve one loss before the next arrived. It was a calculated storm, relentless, overwhelming, merciless. And then came the final blow. Another messenger approached, and this time the words cut deeper than anything before. A great wind had struck the house where Job's sons and daughters were gathered. The structure collapsed. All 10 of his children were gone. In a single day, Job lost his wealth, his livelihood, his legacy, and his future. But the storm was not finished. Satan returned once more and struck Job himself. His body was covered with painful sores from head to toe. His skin broke, his strength faded, his appearance became unrecognizable. The man who once stood in honor now sat in ashes, scraping his wounds with broken pottery. Everything was gone. His possessions gone, his children gone, his health gone, his dignity gone. At the deepest point of his suffering, Job reached a place where nothing remained, no security, no comfort, no answers, only silence. And yet, what Job did next defied every human expectation. He did not curse God. He did not rebel. He did not collapse into bitterness. Instead, he fell to the ground and he worshipped. In the moment when everything had been taken from him, Job turned toward the very God who had allowed it to happen. His words were simple, but they carried a depth that shook both heaven and hell. Naked, I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. This was not denial. This was not emotional numbness. Job felt the pain fully, but he refused to let his pain redefine who God was. Scripture makes something very clear at this point. In all of this, Job did not sin. He did not accuse God of wrongdoing. This is critical. Job did not say he understood. He did not explain the suffering. He did not justify what had happened. He simply chose to trust. And when the second wave of suffering came, when his own body became the battlefield, his response remained consistent. Even when his wife, broken by grief, urged him to abandon his faith and curse God, Job stood firm. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil? With these words, Job revealed something extraordinary. He did not divide God into categories. He did not accept God in blessing and reject Him in suffering. He recognized one God, sovereign in both. His faith was not built on circumstances. It was rooted in something deeper, something unshakable. At this point in the story, help arrives, or at least it appears to. Job's 3 friends come to comfort him. When they first see him, they are overwhelmed. They weep, they tear their robes, they sit with him in silence for 7 days. And in that silence, they do something profoundly right. They do not speak, they do not explain, they simply remain. That silence is sacred. It done in the purest form of compassion, presence without pressure, empathy without answers. But then they begin to speak, and everything changes, one by one. They attempt to explain Job's suffering. Their theology is simple, logical, and deeply flawed. Suffering is the result of sin. Therefore, if Job is suffering, he must have done something wrong. They accuse him indirectly at first, then more directly. They suggest hidden sin. They question his integrity. They imply that even his children deserved what happened to them. What began as comfort turns into judgment. Their mistake was not cruelty, it was certainty. They were more committed to defending their understanding of God than to understanding their friend's pain. And in doing so, they reveal a timeless truth. When someone is suffering, explanations often wound more than they heal. The lesson is clear. When people are in pain, they do not need your theology. They need your presence. Do not rush to explain. Do not try to solve what you cannot see. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is simply to stay. As the conversations continue, as the accusations intensify, and as the silence of heaven stretches on, Job reaches a breaking point. He begins to speak, not with rebellion, but with raw honesty. He curses the day of his birth. He questions the value of life itself. He cries out in anguish, asking why light is given to those in misery, why life continues for those who long for relief. He does not pretend. He does not hide behind religious language. He speaks from the depth of his pain. Job asks questions that many are afraid to ask. He feels abandoned. He feels targeted. He feels as though God himself has become his enemy. And yet, he does not walk away. This is what makes Job's faith so profound. He questions, but he does not reject. He struggles, but he does not surrender his relationship with God. Even in his confusion, Even in his anguish, something inside him remains anchored. He does not understand God, but he refuses to let go of him. This is the tension at the heart of true faith. Not certainty, but trust. Not clarity, but commitment. Job stands in the darkness without answers, without explanations, without relief, and still he remains. And in that place, something deeper than knowledge begins to form. A faith that is no longer dependent on understanding. A relationship that is no longer sustained by blessing. A connection that will soon move beyond belief into encounter. There are long chapters of silence. After the arguments have been exhausted, after Job has poured out his anguish, after every human explanation has failed, something extraordinary finally happens. God speaks, but not in the way anyone expects. He does not come with a gentle whisper of comfort. He does not offer a soft explanation. He does not sit Job down and walk him through the hidden reasons behind his suffering. Instead, God answers out of a whirlwind, a storm, a force of overwhelming power that immediately establishes one truth. This is not a conversation between equals. This is the Creator addressing the creation. And then, rather than explaining anything, God begins to ask questions. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. The question hangs in the air. No answer. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Silence. Have you ever commanded the morning or caused the dawn to know its place? Nothing. Question after question follows, each one expanding the horizon of reality far beyond Job's comprehension. God speaks of the sea, of the stars, of the weather, of creatures wild and untamed. He describes systems, forces, and mysteries that operate completely outside human control or understanding. And Job, who had spoken so boldly before, now has nothing to say, not one answer. This is the turning point. God does not answer Job's why. He replaces it. He shifts the entire foundation of the conversation. The issue was never that Job lacked information. It was that he assumed he could understand the full scope of what God was doing. God's questions dismantle that assumption piece by piece. If you cannot explain how the earth was formed, if you cannot command the sunrise, if you cannot govern the forces of nature, then how can you expect to fully comprehend the purpose behind suffering? The purpose of God's response is not humiliation, it is revelation. It breaks the illusion of control. It exposes the limits of human understanding. And it invites Job into a deeper reality, trust without total comprehension. Because the truth is this, Job did not need an explanation. He needed an encounter. After God speaks, something shifts inside Job. Not his circumstances, not his pain, but his perspective. For the first time in the entire story, Job responds not from confusion, not from defense, not from argument, but from clarity. He says, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. This is not a conclusion based on logic. It is the result of revelation. And then comes the statement, Mamamamad contains the entire turning point of his journey. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. This is the climax. This is the moment everything was moving toward the end. Before this moment, Job knew about God. His theology was correct. His life was righteous. His devotion was real. But it was still, in some sense, second-hand, formed through knowledge, tradition, and understanding. Now, everything is different. Now, he sees, not physically, but spiritually, not intellectually, but experientially. This is the transformation. Faith has moved from indirect to direct, from information to encounter, from belief to vision. Job does not suddenly understand why he suffered. The questions that once consumed him are no longer answered in the way he expected, but something greater has replaced them. The need for explanation has been overtaken by the reality of presence. He no longer demands answers because he has found something more powerful than answers. He has found God himself, and in that moment, everything changes. Now the secret becomes clear. It was never about endurance. It was never about simply surviving pain. It was never even about proving Satan wrong, though that happened. The secret of Job is this: he moved from knowing about God to truly knowing God. That is the difference. And that difference changes everything. You can know doctrines, you can follow traditions, you can live a moral life, you can even have strong faith, and still only know God at a distance. Job had all of that, and yet there was still a deeper level waiting for him. A level that could only be reached when everything else was stripped away. This is why the story is so unsettling, because it suggests something most people do not want to consider. Sometimes, God allows loss not to punish, not to destroy, not even primarily to test, but to remove every barrier that stands between a person and a direct encounter with Him. Wealth can become a layer. Health can become a layer. Security, relationships, reputation, even understanding, each one can act as a filter through which we experience God rather than experiencing Him directly. Job lost everything, and in losing everything, he gained the only thing that truly matters. Not blessings, not explanations, not restored comfort. He gained God. This is the secret, and it carries a profound implication. If you are in a season where things are being stripped away, if your understanding has failed, if your prayers feel unanswered, it may not be abandonment. It may be invitation. An invitation to move beyond second-hand faith. An invitation to encounter God, not through what He gives, but through who He is. Because in the end, the goal of every trial is not explanation. It is encounter. And when that encounter happens, you will understand what Job discovered, that seeing God, truly knowing Him, is worth more than everything that was lost to get there. After the encounter, after the storm, after the questions that shattered every illusion, something unexpected happens. The story does not end in ashes. It moves toward restoration, but not in the way we might assume. God does not immediately restore Job when he repents. He does not restore him the moment he humbles himself. He does not even restore him right after the divine encounter. Instead, God turns His attention to Job's friends. He declares that they were wrong. Their arguments, their confident explanations, their rigid theology, it did not represent Him accurately. And in a surprising reversal, God instructs them to go to Job. The same Job they had accused. The same Job they had judged. The same Job they had misunderstood. And then God says something extraordinary. Job must pray for them. Think about that moment. Job is still in pain. His body is still broken. His losses are still real. And yet, he is asked to intercede for the very people who wounded him with their words. This is where the story reaches another hidden depth, because forgiveness is not easy when the wounds are fresh. Praying for someone who hurt you, especially when you are still suffering, requires something deeper than emotion. It requires a transformation of the heart, and Job does it. He does not argue, he does not resist, he prays. In that act, something unlocks. Scripture tells us that the Lord restored Job's fortunes when he prayed for his friends. Not before, not during his suffering, but after forgiveness. This is critical. Restoration came on the other side of grace, and then the restoration unfolds in fullness. Job's wealth is returned, and more than that, it is double. His herds increase beyond what he had before. His household is rebuilt. His life is extended, and he is given children again, 7 sons and 3 daughters. At first glance, it may stance. It may seem that not everything was doubled in the same way. But there is a deeper truth here. The first 10 children were not erased. They were not lost forever. They remain part of his story, part of his eternity, which means, in the fullest sense, nothing was truly taken away. Everything was restored, and more than that, Job now lives not just with blessings, but with a depth of relationship he never had before. He lives long enough to see generations beyond him. His life becomes full again, not just in quantity, but in meaning. He does not end as a broken man. He ends as a fulfilled one. This story is not just about Job. It is about you. Because at some point in life, everyone enters a season that feels like loss. A season where things don't make sense. A season where prayers seem unanswered and heaven feels silent. And in those moments, the natural question is, why? Why is this happening? Why now? Why me? But what if the question itself is incomplete? What if, like Job, the answer is not something you are meant to understand, but someone you are meant to encounter? If you are in a season of suffering right now, consider this possibility. It may not be punishment. It may be invitation, an invitation to move deeper, an invitation to let go of the layers you've built your faith on, security, control, certainty, and step into something more real. Because sometimes, what feels like loss is actually the removal of barriers. Barriers that kept you from seeing God clearly. And if you feel distant from God, if He feels far away, silent, or unreachable, it may not be because He is absent. It may be because your knowledge of Him is still indirect. You may know about Him, you may understand theology, you may have heard countless teachings, but there is a difference between hearing and seeing, between information and encounter. And sometimes, that distance is what drives you to seek Him more deeply, not just as a concept, but as a reality. This is where faith becomes real. Not when everything makes sense, but when you choose to remain, even when it doesn't. In the end, the story of Job leaves us with one truth that stands above all others. The most important thing is not understanding God. It is encountering Him. Understanding can fail. Explanations can fall apart. Logic has limits, but an encounter changes everything. Job never received a detailed answer to his suffering. He never learned about the conversation in heaven. He never discovered the full reason behind his pain, and yet he lacked nothing. Because he gained something greater than answers. He gained God. And that was enough. So wherever you are right now, whether in a season of blessing or a season of loss, remember this. The goal is not to figure everything out. The goal is to know Him, not at a distance, not through someone else's experience, but personally, directly, real. And if this message has spoken to you, if it has challenged your thinking, deepened your understanding, or stirred something in your heart, take a moment to respond. Like this video so more people can discover this truth, subscribe to the channel for more deep insights like this, and follow along as we continue exploring the hidden depths of Scripture together. Because there is always more to uncover. And sometimes, the truth that changes everything is the one you almost missed.